Welcome to the Rant Live.
I think I prematurely I started the video a little early, so I'm sure everybody was really upset about missing those few seconds of that. But
at least they got to hear John go live,
and that's really the most important part of the intro, I think.
Yeah, to make sure that they know they're not watching dead people on their screen. We are very much alive in here.
Right, absolutely. The Rant undead. It's a Monday. So we've kind of decided, I think, with this week, we're going to start trimming them back to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Obviously, there is a dearth of information in the baseball world, if you will. Although, there is a little bit more. We've seen some activity, certainly over the weekend. The undrafted free agency period started. We have a perfect guest for that coming up here shortly, which is really nice. I'm just checking to make sure, and he's actually in there already, which is great. So it's nice when you're working with younger guests because the technological issues do not exist that are there when you're dealing with folks that get past 50.
Their browsers are updated. They've got the latest operating system going on. They've heard of Twitch, all sorts of great stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy, and they probably have Wi-Fi. So it's amazing. But and I think maybe toward the end, just because this show could really go off the rails and be true to its name if we did talk about maybe Long Gone Summer. I don't know what you felt about it, but I spent most of my that's what I figured. I spent most of my evening just trashing it as I was watching it, which is really you got to come up with better things to do. But it was funny because then I wrote about it, and then Lawrence Holmes texted me. He's like, "Hey, dude, I love it. You got to come on the show and talk about this." So I was like, "Okay." So I was on the score talking about it, and Sammy Sosa was on the score this morning.
I know. I listened to that interview. It's so good to hear Sammy back, and I feel like it's kind of a coup, a little bit, that Chicago media is bringing back Sammy before the Cubs have a chance to. So they're just going to make it inevitable that he will be back because Chicago media has already brought him back.
But it was Bruce Levine was essentially acting as his handler in that situation, was he not? Like Bruce basically set it up and then came on the show just to facilitate the Sammy Sosa interview.
Sounded like it. But he also he was on with Kaplan too, and he got it. He's got his script. He's got a script. He sticks to it. He says the right things. He doesn't say too much, if you know what I mean. Sammy knows what not to say, but he also kind of gives a little bit of a wink and a nod to it too, and he's just like, all right, let's move past it. And I think we should, I think we should move past it. Ricketts needs to move past it. The Cubs need to move past whatever and let bygones be bygones with whatever problems they had with Sammy Sosa back in the past, whatever problems fans had. It's got to be over. The dude hit a lot of dongs and had the bleachers rocking at Wrigley Field, and we should just remember that instead of some of the garbage that went on. Because, garbage always goes on. You can't shine a light on that forever. It's stupid. Just make it sad.
And I felt, and I was a little bit, I was wondering how it was going to play out with them having Kerry Wood as the primary kind of spokesman from that team, because we all know, again, Kerry Wood is the one who, the apocryphal story of smashing the boombox, right? And so, but there at the end, when they talked about kind of Sosa's legacy, he was completely positive about it and talking about how much Sammy meant to the team and to the city and still does, because again, and I think we've talked about it on here before, and we all know this, the ticket prices at Wrigley Field are relatively high, higher than any place else in the National League. And they've been that way since 2004, but the trend really started in 1999 of them really skyrocketing. Interestingly enough, that's the year after Sosa had his Sosa and McGuire's home run chase, and so attendance was up and everything was going. And that started, obviously a lot of people have maintained that since then. But he was that was the reason people went to watch baseball at Wrigley Field for about 5 seasons, was to see if Sammy Sosa would do something incredible. And it seemed like more often than not, he delivered on that. And I would like to see him back. Again, I don't need him to acknowledge all the things he's done wrong, right? I think we've all got friends who we know there are certain personality quirks about them that you just have to live with. And you don't, after a while, it's like, I don't make my buddy apologize every time he does something dumb or flakes out on something. He's still my buddy. I just realize, hey, that's his personality. So I'd love to see him back. I think it's going to happen at some point the momentum seems to be going that way. I hope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 80% of Cub fans, according to unofficial Twitter polls, want Sammy back. So, if you want to sell tickets, bring Sammy back. Sell tickets. Sammy's there couple times a year. He's singing the 7th inning stretch. He's throwing out the first pitch. Sammy Sosa day. Let's make it happen. Everybody wants this except for idiots. So I don't know what to say. I mean, it's just my opinion. It's my opinion. Get over it.
Right. Well,
get over it.
And let's and speaking of, so there's Sosa has a legacy. It's already there. He's done and gone. But the Cubs this weekend, well, starting Wednesday, really, so over the last several days, have added a lot of people to the organization. Fewer than normal, because as we know, the draft would normally be about 40 rounds, or would be 40 rounds, and it got shortened to 5, so they made their 5 picks. And then there's a whole different process of undrafted free agency, because you've got hundreds more players who were not part of that 5-round draft. And so we were lucky enough, for those who've been watching for a while, so Josh Knipp, who's part of KHG Sports Management, he was one of our guests very early on, and contacted me and said, hey, one of our guys is about to sign with the Cubs, and I'll let you, he's like, if you want to do an interview with him, have him on at some point, I can try to hook that up. I said, great, can I break that news? And he was like, yes, absolutely can. But Coastal Carolina University already tweeted it out. So I was like, oh, well, those bastards. But no, they 2016 College World Series champs from Coastal Carolina, by the way. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our guest, Scott. And I want to get your name. Is it Kobos? How am I saying? Kobos.
Yeah, Kobos is fine.
Good. That's fine. So we'll just start calling you. I'll just call you Scott, and then it doesn't matter. But Scott is a lefty pitcher. Was signed yesterday by the Cubs out of Coastal Carolina University. One of two players from your college team who was signed by the Cubs yesterday, right?
Yes, sir. Our shortstop Scott McKean, he signed shortly after me. It was pretty nice to hear.
Awesome. Well, one of the things, and I know everybody is tuned into the draft and how that works, and again, as we mentioned, this is a very different process. So, what was that like? Had you already been in contact with the Cubs, like through scouting or some other? Had they been reaching out to you and communicated, or what did that process look like leading up to you signing yesterday?
Yes, sir. So actually, I've been in contact with the Cubs for a while, since I started pitching at my junior college, St. John's River State College. The area scout was Tom Clark, and when I went to Coastal, he transferred areas as well. So we've been in constant contact since I've been at St. John's throughout my Coastal career, and we talked probably a few weeks before all this stuff, like the draft stuff, started going on. And then he was like, I'm old. I'm 22. I'm a 5th-year senior. I just finished my degree. And in a 5-round draft, I'm not going to be one of those guys selected. But he told me, like, you're going to be a free agent sign. We want you whenever that period starts. We're going to come heavy. And they came heavy.
So that was were there other teams that were in on it, or was this basically one of those things where the Cubs were in on you from the start, and that's where you wanted to go right out of the gate?
There's a few teams, but the Cubs really impressed me with how they went about the process. They put a lot of legwork in. I talked to the pitching director, Craig Breslow, had a great conversation with him about his philosophy, how he teaches things, a few specifics on what he wants to see, what he wanted to see if I got into the organization, and we clicked. And obviously, if I'm going to click with the pitching director, it's pretty a good fit. And then also, I've known that their player development as a whole is very high caliber. So I just decided it was the best place for me to be to become the best pitcher I could be.
Now, what team did you grow up rooting for? I see an Indians pennant behind you. So are you a Cleveland Indians fan, or is that not Cleveland?
It is Cleveland. I was actually drafted in 2017 by the Indians.
Yeah, I saw that. But what was your team as a kid rooting for?
So my team as a kid was actually the Cubs. No lie, I promise with you. So both my parents had grown up in Chicago, and they had I think my mom grew up in the Oak Lawn neighborhood. So they were Cubs fans. I grew up watching guys like Mark Zambrano, Mark Zambrano, sorry.
Yeah, real
Derek Lee. That was terrible. It's my fault. But
no, Carlos Zambrano. Yeah, we know who you meant. We know who you meant. That's awesome. And so, have you ever been to Wrigley Field? Have you ever caught a Cubs game up here, or
I have not. I've not had the pleasure doing that.
Well, hopefully, your first time will be on the mound pitching for them.
That would be ideal.
Well, you have. I'm assuming you've been to a Pelicans game playing your college ball right down the road from the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, or have you had a chance to get over there and catch any of those over your time?
Yeah, so my family used to vacation near Myrtle Beach, so we'd go probably every summer. We'd catch a game, and then I also went recently with a couple of my teammates to a game last summer while I was still kind of mildly rehabbing a back injury from 2019.
Okay. Well, and so speaking of rehabbing injuries, I know you're kind of grown used to that so far, but I know you've had a little bit of a circuitous route, if we will, right? So as I'm looking at it, so I know you started out UNC Asheville, right? Primarily an outfielder, or were you playing both ways at that point when you started your college career?
I was entirely an outfielder. I didn't even pitch in high school. To be honest, I couldn't be bothered with pitching because I liked hitting so much. But and then I just got to UNC Asheville, no pitching, just outfield. And then junior college, pretty much didn't have a choice. My coach was either like, "Hey, you're gonna do this whether you like it or not, because I think you can be good at it." And turned out to be very correct.
Now, was that a matter of, I mean, did they just know like, hey, Scott's got a really strong outfield arm. We think he can do something? Because if you didn't pitch in high school, they're like, that's kind of an interesting transition, because a lot of times we see that, right? Guys play both ways, and it's just a matter of where's the need, or how do those things develop? So was it a matter of you just had a cannon for an arm and they were like, all right, you're going to the mound because we need you to pitch?
Essentially, that is what happened. So I decided to leave Asheville, and I went down because my roommate actually transferred from Asheville to St. John's River as well, and he got me a tryout, and I went down there, took BP on the field, hit all right, or good enough, I guess. 3 throws from the outfield, and the head coach immediately goes, "All right, we're going to the bullpen." And I was like, "So I don't think you understand. I don't pitch. I'm just here to play outfield." He goes, "No, you're not. We're going to." And from there on, I just threw a couple bullpens a week, and it kind of took off.
So how does that then, I guess, where are you at? I know you said you talked with Craig Breslow, and again, those are the viewers out there. And as you mentioned, he's the Cubs pitching director, former major league player himself, and was once touted. Craig Breslow is the man once known as the smartest man in baseball. I think he's got like a degree in nuclear physics or something from an Ivy League school. So generally when he sees things, he's pretty smart about what he's doing. But how in a fairly short period of time, like pitching takes a while to really master. And so I'm sure you're not going to say that you're anywhere close to a finished product, but how long did that take you? Because I mean, anybody can go out there and throw hard if you have a strong arm, but how did you move from an outfielder to a guy who's actually able to develop different pitches? I mean, what was that process like, trying to add more than just a fastball?
Honestly, it took a long time. When I was at St. John's, I had next to no clue what I was doing. Pretty much our head coach there was also the pitching coach. He just kind of barked out, "Hey, do this," and do it, because I was kind of athletic enough at the time to get it done. And I still struggle with the changeup, but I threw a kind of a 2-seam fastball that I just took some off to play as a changeup. And I learned a slider a few weeks before the season started, and I just started throwing that. Wasn't very good. Honestly, it wasn't very good even my first year at Coastal until 19, and then I really started trying to develop that pitch. And I'm still kind of in the development process of a changeup. It's hit or miss, but it's got some promise to it. But it was really hard because obviously I'd spent, say, 10 years throwing nothing but forcing fastballs in from the outfield. And a lot of it is just feeling the seams in a different way, kind of like for a changeup on different fingers, like my middle and ring finger. It's kind of, especially with the changeup, trying to focus on that same arm speed with a fastball, because that's really what will get you with the changeup. Is if I kind of fake the arm speed or baby the arm speed with the changeup, it's just not going to be a good pitch. And that really was the toughest part, is trying to get the same mechanics with a very different feel when you're not used to doing it.
So, did you always want to be a baseball player? Was this always the dream, or was this like, hey, I'm really good at this, but I could also do this if this doesn't work out? I know, aren't you a physics major?
Yeah, yes, sir. I graduated with a degree in applied physics with an engineering concentration and a math minor. And I did work towards a stats minor for a little bit, but kind of let that go. So I've always wanted to be baseball 100%. I mean, I have a twin brother. He's in the Pirates organization, and my mom used to tell us that we'd chase each other around the house with a bat and a ball before we could even swing or nothing. We just kind of run around and I guess play a pretty barbaric game of tag. But I'd always been, I want to put as many eggs as I can in the baseball basket, but my mom would always be academics first, and she really harped on that. And so obviously I took my academics very seriously. So,
well, it seems like a pitcher should be good at physics. I mean, isn't that like part of the game, is knowing physics and how to make physics work for you?
Absolutely. I actually did my graduation project was kind of going through some data from the TrackMan system at Coastal Carolina, trying to see if we could pop out any identifying factors in just random success, like induced vertical break, horizontal break. Wasn't very fruitful. We didn't find anything, but I did learn a whole lot about just the aerodynamics of a pitch, kind of like obviously there's spin rate, Magnus force, and stuff like that. But learning some stuff such as the seam shifted wake, which is something I've tried to recreate in my own changeup, which pretty much is really hard to explain short, but just differences in pressure on sides of the ball lead to creating an additional force besides gravity, so you get more downward action or acceleration on a changeup. Guys that do this really well, like Steven Strasburg, you see guys like Trevor Bauer throw the two seam that takes advantage of this effect, and just honestly learning about a lot of that stuff helped my changeup. So it kind of plays hand in hand. Like my baseball helped me get into school, get some money for school, and then my academics have now begun to help me understand much finer details of what I'm trying to do.
Well, that's so I could imagine. So you and Breslow are kind of like right there in that same. You guys got the same wavelength. So maybe you've got again down the road. Maybe you stay in the game. So you've got a career as a pitching director once your professional baseball career ends up. Who knows, right?
That would be pretty good. Wouldn't complain about that one bit.
So I'm really I'm interested in seeing how this all plays out. Now, have the Cubs talked to you at all about, and I know we're still waiting, and there's a lot that's probably unknown, and they may not even be anything that you've got definitively, but do you have any clue about when you might be able to start as far as kind of reporting or working as a part of the organization, or is all that stuff on hold for you right now with everything else in question?
It's pretty much on hold. It's basically we'll see what we can do and when we can do it and how we can organize it, but there's nothing concrete set, at least that I've heard yet.
Well, and so I mentioned it earlier, and I was texting back and forth. That's why I was checking to make sure the guys from KHG to see if they were on here. But I was working through that, and what I always find interesting, and perhaps it's we always hear about agents being involved in these. There's famous super agents who are working on $100 million deals, but a lot of the stuff like what's going on now, and this is kind of a different deal, the way that free agency is working for guys like yourself who were not drafted. So what kind of a role did Drew and the other folks at KHG play in helping you facilitate all this stuff, and how they helped you so far as you're trying to make this transition from a college athlete into becoming a professional?
They played a huge role, a huge advisory role, especially just giving me the information I need to make my decision, as well as fielding calls from scouts, telling me things to look for, kind of key questions to ask guys. Like I know I had a call with Theo Epstein, and I was like, "Hey, Drew, please, God, tell me the right questions to ask." And he helps me pretty much just, it really is the business side of the game that they help me kind of understand and lead me as just kind of how to navigate all these waters.
Does that is like pretty intimidating, like to have grown up a Cubs fan and to what extent you still are? But these are guys that you're seeing on television every day. You see guys, I know from our end, I always find it kind of intimidating when I'm coming across somebody who I know is an expert in a certain topic, and I'm trying to figure out, like you said, with the question, like, how do I ask this question the right way so that this person thinks I know what I'm saying, and so that I make sure this makes sense. Was that an intimidating process, trying to come through and talk with Theo Epstein and talk with these guys at the highest levels of this organization?
It really was. With Breslow was kind of easy because we're both kind of smart people, like talking about baseball. We kind of know exactly. Honestly, we kind of got lucky and just. So
are you saying Theo Epstein's not a smart person? No, I'm kidding. I don't.
No.
I'm just messing with you.
No. So me and Breslow just clicked, and that was really easy. But for guys like Mr. Epstein, he's the guy, he's the top dog. And what happened is I pretty much just got a text from a random number, and it was him. Hey, can we get on a phone call? I was like, oh my God. I was throwing at our old middle school with my twin brother, and I was like, bro, like, and so my first text, I was like, Drew, I can't believe I'm going to call this guy. And Drew was like, do not miss this opportunity to take that call. I would never dream of it. And I was like, what do I ask for? Like, I don't really have any question about the organization, but I can't tell him, nah, I'm good. Like, so Drew helped me a lot with that. Just like, don't worry. Like, here's two things you can ask. And then if you feel confident enough, you can tell him you want to be a Cub and all that. So that's pretty much how the conversation went. 2 quick questions, got that answered for me. And I was like, man, y'all really put your necks out, and I appreciate it. The work they put into me, I'm not even in the organization yet, just shows me how dedicated they are to their players. And I was blown away. I was like, I need to make this happen.
Now, obviously, you've worked so hard to get to where you are right now, and it's a whole lifetime. People just see that moment when these young players like yourself are drafted, and the kissing their moms and the hugs but there's so many hours and hours playing, traveling to games, and the money involved, and the training and the time and the workouts and everything. What does it feel like to finally get to that extra step and get that call and get drafted? In that moment, what does that feel like when you get that phone call? Is there some sort of I don't know, just describe it for me, like what that feels like. If it must feel great. I mean, I would imagine.
No, it feels fantastic. It was really nice. It was, obviously in the back of my head, I'd been hurt the last 2 years, been denied draft, teams are going to said they're going to draft me, and then our medical team said we don't think you're healthy enough. Like that happened in 2019, and to get that call and to go to talk to Mr. Epstein and say, I want to be a Cub, like they want me to be a Cub as well. It was a huge release of anxiety, because obviously in the back of my head I'm like, what if I get screwed again somehow, some magical way? This doesn't work out. But then also it's kind of an adrenaline rush. It's like it's finally not over, because obviously I have a lot of work left to do, but it's finally come time for me to make that next step. And after, honestly, a couple years of uncertainty of whether or not I'll hold up to be able to make that next step, it felt fantastic.
Well, Cub fans are going to hold you to a very high standard of excellence. So you're a Cub fan, so you know how passionate we can be. If you walk one guy, we might call you a bum, but don't worry. As soon as you strike somebody out, we'll be all on your side again. No, I kid, but no, it's got to feel so special. Like, every time I see these drafts and I see kind of the smiles and the families and all that stuff. And I feel like we were screwed out of a little bit of it this year because of only having 5 rounds and stuff. But, it must have been great for your brother and your family. And it just, I don't know, it's been making me so happy in such a difficult time for all of us in the world right now to see just a little bright spot of baseball when we have no baseball, and it's happening to guys like you. And I don't know, it's just cool to kind of, you can just kind of tell by the look on your face right now, Scott. It's just like you're having trouble holding in your joy, but please do not hold it in on this show. This show's called The Rant,
Yeah.
Be as joyous as you like.
It's always good to see a bunch of guys' dreams come true. We had our Friday night guy, Zach McCamley, drafted by the Marlins. He's a stud. I've seen how hard he works. He definitely earned everything he's got. We see guys, obviously, like Scotty behind me coming to the Cubs. He's worked his butt off as well. And obviously, we have a couple more guys. Coastal's always chock full of guys. We got a great program run by great coaches, and just being able to see everybody's hard work pay off. Even guys I don't know, it's like, oh, this guy, he just got drafted 5th overall. That's so sick. Like, must be nice to be a millionaire, but I always love seeing guys' dreams come true. It's been a great weekend.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, you mentioned, and I'm sure there were some times in there probably because you mentioned kind of looking at the medicals, right? Because I know you were a redshirt senior this year, so you had to miss most of your first season there at Coastal, right? And was that elbow reconstruction?
Yeah, so I had an avulsion fracture, which isn't a normal Tommy John. So my UCL was perfectly healthy, but I had ripped a chunk of my elbow bone off of my elbow, and they pretty much just had to anchor that back in with a screw. So it was slightly shorter recovery time, but still a major surgery and a major pain in the ass.
And a pain in the elbow too, I'm sure. But
a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, were there some times there where, you know, and certain guys may react to this differently, right? Like some people take a setback like that, and that forces them to work even harder to get back, and they do come back stronger. And I know some guys, there's the most difficult thing I think with something like that is the mental part of the game, and feeling like, all right, I can go out and cut this fastball loose. Was that a difficult thing for you, or were you ready to get back out there and get right back at it? Was the physical and the mental, which of those was the most difficult to kind of get through?
I gotta say the mental was the worst to get through, because missing that whole first season, obviously playing at Coastal is we get an incredible ballpark, great teams we play against. Especially as good as that team was in 2018, it was the worst having to sit out, especially hosting a regional. I pretty much had to sit on the sidelines. Obviously, I was so happy for my teammates that they worked to get there, but there's every part of me just wishing, honestly, if they let me throw right now with this cast on, I'd do it. The mental was the toughest because I knew I was going to get back. Obviously, I trust my surgeon. I trusted the rehab I was going to do, but the worst was just not being able to play. I'm one of those guys who I like to play catch a ton every day. My teammates make fun of me because I like to throw a lot. So then I was like, I'll never play catch with you because my arm will fall off, stuff like that. But the physical part made it easier, honestly, because you kind of just get to attack the weight room, attack your rehab every day. Luckily, it went by faster than I thought it would. The only kind of weird day was the very first day throwing, and I was looking at my elbows like, do not break again. Like, whatever you do, I'm throwing the ball as light as I can. Just please stay attached to my body.
Well, and you know, I know that kind of cut a few things short. So really, because obviously, and we look at the last few seasons, right? So your 2018 season, I think you had maybe 4 appearances or so, right, before you got hurt, and then 2019, I think was 12 or maybe it's 14 appearances I saw, and then obviously this past season got cut short because of the overall shutdown. Everybody did. So, you know, really, and so then I'm sitting there looking, I'm thinking, well, geez, this guy didn't even start out as a pitcher. So even if you're throwing a lot, you've got, in common parlance, I guess, you don't have a whole lot of mileage on that left arm. So yeah. I have to imagine that's one of the things that either the Cubs are looking at or that you're looking at and thinking, well, you know, hey, you might be at an advanced age, relatively speaking, and you're like 22 years old. So I'm saying you're at an advanced age. That's really silly to say, but the number of innings that you've got on that arm relative to your age is very, very low. And I have to figure that lends itself to your durability moving forward. And I would assume your ability to grow and to still learn quite a bit more. Is that something that scouts look at or that the Cubs have talked to you about? Or is that even something that you pay attention to at all?
I don't think it's something that they necessarily talk about, but obviously I've already had surgery on my arm, so I don't think they're really worried about the mileage because I've already kind of gone through that process. For me, it's just getting into a groove. It's been so hard. Like, I got into a groove at my junior college because I pitched for 9 months straight. And then I go to Coastal Carolina, work through the fall, and then I lose my groove when I have surgery because I can't do anything for 4 months. And then Riza picked back up in 2019. A disaster. I've lost visual, and I think I hear you all a little bit.
Yeah, I think we just got back in right now. Are we all back?
Got a pop. Are you still there?
Moment.
Yeah, I got you. I'm good.
All right, good.
All right, so like I said, I came back in 2019, then I hurt my back, and I came back from that. I still had some lingering symptoms just because it was really bad. I had bad sciatica symptoms, so I kind of lost a lot in my left leg just from not being able to use it because it was pretty much numb the whole 8 weeks I was out. And that just really didn't let me get into a groove. And then I pitch a little bit in summer ball, pitch a little bit more in the fall, start hitting a groove, come in for the season. I'm pitching well. I do have one disaster. My last start didn't end well for me.
It happens.
Wake Forest, and then it's boom, season's over. And it's like, part of me is obviously it sucks that the season's over, but part of me is like, once I can get into a real groove, then I can see how good I can be, because I haven't pitched consistently really since 2017 when I threw, I think it was like 70 something innings at my junior college. So once I can get that done and get a few more innings on my belt consistently, I think that's when I'm really going to see what I can be.
Well, hopefully we get some news soon that they're going to start up some kind of program for everybody. I think once they deem it safe enough, even if there isn't a minor league season this year and of any kind of normal length or appearance, I mean, who knows? You could end up pitching for the actual Cubs this year at Wrigley Field, because I don't know how many of these major leaguers they're gonna use or are gonna be wanted, even want to play. But yeah, I'm curious as to what you just said about getting into a groove and stuff. What are you going to do to try to at least maintain some sort of groove to keep yourself, kind of fit and your arm working and working on pitches and all that stuff?
Luckily right now, so I'm at home in Charlotte, and my brother and I were lucky enough to find a used safety bar for like squatting and stuff. So we built out of wood and some cement, some pillars for a squat rack, so you can do some heavy lifting, so I can stay in shape physically. And then with my twin brother being here, where we go out to the field every day and throw, we have a mound, so we kind of throw bullpens to each other standing up because our catcher went back home. So pretty much I'm losing game experience, but I'm still able to develop, partially because obviously there's stuff the Cubs want me to work on, which we haven't gotten to yet because I'm so new to the organization. But there's stuff personally that I know I need to work on, so I'm able to hammer that day in and day out. So I'm doing a good job, I think, at least staying in shape and progressing my development given the circumstances. So I'm really just business as usual almost.
Now you're a twin. Is identical twin or a fraternal twin?
It's identical. Very.
Yeah.
So you might not even be Scott. Is that what we're saying?
You could. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Like, did you guys ever like switch around? Like my keyboard player Gary in my band, also an identical twin. They'd switch around. He's also a physics major, by the way. Maybe it's a physics twin thing. I don't know. I can't explain these things, but they used to switch classrooms and stuff like that. And do you ever do anything like that? Any fun switcheroo twin stories?
Nah, we were never really big on switching up. And then once we got into high school, I kept my hair kind of long like this, and he got a buzz cut so people could tell us apart. So we never really took advantage of the identical twin powers.
Well, you mentioned there is throwing bullpens to each other and kind of working that, and I know there are some specific things that the Cubs are going to get into with your development, but what are you working on? I know you already talked about kind of developing that changeup, and clearly there's a point at which, kind of maybe expanding on what we talked about earlier. It's one thing to be able to throw hard, right? It's one thing to be able to throw straight, and maybe if you have a couple pitches in college that you can really dial in, that works out. But when you get to the professional level, they're going to look for that third, that fourth pitch, what you're able to. So where are you kind of working on right now? What pitches are you working on dialing in, and how's that going?
The main one for me is the changeup. Pretty much it's dominating my catch play. Obviously, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get loose, throwing the fastball. But for me, with my changeup, I can get really good movement on it, but the consistency that I can throw it where I want it is nowhere near where it needs to be. So I've just been hammering being able to, what I call box a changeup, is pretty much just throw it anywhere in the strike zone as a competitive pitch. So I threw a bullpen early today to my brother. I threw my fastballs, got my arm going, and then it was just changeup. And along with that, I'm working on my front arm mechanics because I tend to get a little long or cast out wide with my front arm. Kind of leads to some posture things that I don't like. So I've been but really focusing on keeping that arm tight. It's smoothing up my rotation with my upper half, my shoulders, and that's been helping me a lot with my changeup because it's leading to smoother rotation, much more consistent arm path and extension. So that's kind of two things going hand in hand, just pounding with reps and then also slight little mechanical cues.
But there's one. So here's the other thing. So I was looking through your bio, and when I looked at your stats from, not even the stats, but when I looked at your bio from UNC Asheville, you were listed at 6 foot and 155 pounds. And now it says 6'2", 200, which is still that's not a big deal, but 6 foot and 155 to 6'2", and 200 over the course of 4 years. That's a bit of a growth spurt there. Was that UNC Asheville information accurate? And if so, I have to imagine that kind of growth over that period of time is going to maybe take a little bit of getting used to. Did that actually mess with your mechanics a little bit? Did you have to get used to that, or was it all just a pretty natural progression?
So the stats at Asheville are correct. I was 6 feet, 155 pounds. I was a beanpole. I was pretty much skin and bones at that point.
I just think it's interesting that you had that kind of velocity, that you had that you had a strong enough arm, given all that, for the coaches to kind of recognize some things out of you moving forward. Or did that happen between that freshman year and moving on to junior college?
I was still pretty small in junior college. I think during the season I was pitching at around 170 pounds, something like that. So it still wasn't. I was bigger, but that is a very relative term. So I put on just nothing really that I could feel different. Just I knew I was heavier. But then when I got to Coastal, I went in the summer with whatever class of 2018 that they're bringing in, and I worked with our strength coach Nick White, and he did an amazing job because I'd never really been on a solid lifting program that was really consistent and also so well thought out. So what really happened was I got there and he looked at me and said, "You're going to put on weight." I said, "Yes, sir," because I'm not really in a position to argue with him. Honestly, that first fall, I kind of blew up. Not saying I'm a huge guy, but considering where I was, there was a huge difference in my physicality from that July to about December. It was really just incredible how different my body had become. My mom damn near didn't recognize me when I came home. But then, so I was still around 195, dancing around 200 pounds. And then he kept hearing me each year, like, you have the frame, put on more weight. And then he was going to handle making sure I still move as quickly as I need to and produce the power that I need to pitch well. And slowly it's starting to creep up. I've actually put on 10 pounds in quarantine intentionally. So I'm 210 right now because, if my frame holds it, it'll benefit me. Hopefully throwing a little harder would be just always fantastic. But the weight gain, I don't feel led to any sort of mechanical difficulties. Maybe I put on so much weight and strength that it could have led to hurting my arm or something like that. But even then, I feel like that would be a reach.
And what's the fastball velocity up to these days?
I've topped out at 95.
Okay. And do you think you have room to up? Safely and naturally to actually move that up a couple ticks with the proper training and everything, or it granted. So I'm not 95 is incredibly solid. Like, that's awesome. So I'm not trying to, but it is interesting. So the Cubs looked like they went pretty heavy on some lefties who can really bring it. So they've got. So if you're throwing 95. Of the guys that come to that in the last few days, you're like fourth on the list right now.
I'm a nobody after JV speed.
Yeah. Now, are you like? Because I saw was it Burl Caraway? Right, he hits 100. Yeah. Luke Little, we saw throwing 105. I don't know how real that was, but now would you feel safe? You like to throw all the time. Are you gonna maybe try to partner up with Luke Little and catch that 105 mile an hour fastball from him in a bullpen session?
Definitely not in the bullpen session. You would not behind the plate. Honestly, and if I did, I'd have 2 masks, 2 probably 2 gloves on just to be safe. But he went to a high school around here. I think they were in our conference in high school, but I don't really know him very well. And I also can't cheat on my throwing partner, my brother. That'd be.
No, that works out. Well, I'm really looking forward to when we can get some of this baseball back, when we can start seeing these things develop. And it'd be pretty cool, if you're able to eventually play a little professional ball just right down the street, kind of stay in the Myrtle Beach area, and then just head on down there and put on some Pelicans gear. So I think that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It'd be very convenient so my mom can come see me play pretty often.
Absolutely. Well, what I guess you don't really know what the next step is. So, with that, I don't know, Danny, if you have anything else to Danny, you always got a good question to close things out.
Well, it's not really a question. It's more of just like, hey, man, good luck. It's a weird year. You got drafted in a very strange time. It's and I imagine that somebody like you is you sound incredibly intelligent. You sound like you work really hard, and
Yes,
we're all rooting for you because we're Cubs fans, and now you're a Cub. So welcome to this whole thing that we do here, because it's a little we run a little hot around these parts. The Cub fans run a little hotter than other fan bases, I think. So good luck to you dealing with us and moving through the organization. Hope to see you at Wrigley Field someday, man. I sit right above the bullpen, so I'll be up there waving to you. And if you need anything, you let me and Bleacher Jeff know. We'll take care of you.
Yes, sir. I'll trade you a ball eventually for a pack of seeds or something.
No problem, man. We got it all up there. Anything you need.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Scott.
I love talking to young guys.
So
Look how happy I am. Look how happy I am talking to young guys. Oh, I love it. I love the kids. I love it.
Well, it's so great because and what's so interesting to me is to get some insight from a guy like this who's fresh out of college, right? Who's talking about literally doing a physics paper on the data of his own pitching and other stuff. So like how that sort of the dynamic and the viewpoint changes. We joke about like the difference between old school and new school, but I mean, this is a guy who's literally a physics major. And so, studying that and how does that work? And I really think that plays into, when you think about somebody like a Craig Breslow and I wasn't even joking about like that seems, and he even mentioned it. Those are kind of the similar. And I think the Cubs are seeking out some of these guys because he's also having not, he doesn't know what he doesn't know yet. Yeah. He didn't spend 18 years coming up pitching. And so I think a guy like that, there's a little bit more room to maybe work with him. And as he said, I mean, he's been able to put some on his frame. That's really cool to me because here's a guy who, nobody really knows much about unless you're following Coastal Carolina or, you really, really get into it. So that's kind of fun to get to know these guys on a little bit of a level. And just like you said, to see the expression on his face, like he just had a smile plastered on his face the whole time. And it's just, the guy just recognized his dream, right? He's a professional baseball player now.
Yeah, I love it.
He's not jaded at all. It's great.
I remember, and you can look him up because he does have a baseball reference page, but a guy went to high school named Tom Noss. He got drafted by the Twins. And he got drafted out of high school. He was the best player. He was the quarterback of our football team at Hershey High School, right outside of Chicago. And, all these teachers are telling him, we did this event together called Mr. Husky, which was like a male. I got in because I could sing and he got in because he was like the captain of the football team, so we were there for different reasons. But I remember going backstage and we were standing backstage and I'm like, and he had just been drafted. I said, hey, Tom, dude, that's so cool. You got drafted. He's like, I didn't know you liked baseball. I just thought you were, a theater guy and, like music and stuff. I'm like, I love baseball. You kidding me? He's like, that's so cool. By the Twins, like, good luck. I'm like, so you're going, right? He's like, I don't know. Like everybody wants me to go to college. They want me to, do this and that. They, teachers are telling me to apply myself. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, go to freaking baseball, man. There's plenty of time for college. This is you guys. You can play professional baseball. Like next year, you will be on the Twins like rookie league team. And I'm like, just go do that because very few people get that opportunity. And so, for Scott to come on and, the moment after he got drafted, I had the same feelings. And I thought about Tom when I was having that conversation just right after he got drafted, a kind of similar look on his face, similar idea. What a cool thing to be one of the few hundred people in the whole country that get to play professional baseball, and have a slim shot, even in the minor leagues, to go to the major leagues. It's so many dreams came true last week. And it makes me feel great. It in the middle of a terrible time in our world.
It does. So now that we don't have, our fresh-faced young guests that we would corrupt with our ranting and getting pissed off about the sport. I mean, where do you come down? Because there was some really contentious stuff this weekend that was said basically from both sides, which is really hilarious to me. I love, and by love I mean hate, how the owners consistently come out and be like, we've caught the players are not acting in good faith. We've given these offers. Like nobody believes. Like you're not fooling anyone. You've not given these different offers. Like at what point does their hubris and I don't think there's anything they can do actually at this point to alienate the people who still believe the owners are trying. But it's the dumbest thing. Like, it feels like you're fired. You can't fire me. I quit. Kind of a thing, right? I mean,
ugh. I mean, it's ugly all the way around. If they end up with the 48 games, that's going to be just a sad state for everybody. It won't be the expanded playoffs. The season will be over by probably towards the end of October. I mean, it'll just be a big fat dud. And they're going to play this. It's almost like a season played under protest. It's really kind of what it feels. Yeah. Like when a game is like under protest. Not that it ever means anything because nothing ever comes of the protest. Usually when it happens. But I mean, very few times I think it's ever come to anything. But that's what the whole season feels like. It's just going to have this black cloud on it. Maybe even next year will too. I think, to me, I was talking about it on Friday. It was a little depressing, I know other people are feeling this way. I've seen some other articles come out. So I know that I'm not feeling so alone. And just kind of knowing that, like, even if we do get baseball this year, there's still like going to be a bad taste in my mouth about how it all came to be. And, it won't feel like a celebration of it coming back. It'll almost feel like everybody's coming back begrudgingly to do something that they don't necessarily want to do in a time that we could really use some positivity. It's get them. They can't give it to us. They just can't give it to us. They're incapable. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I talk about baseball every day to you, to Crawley, to Michael, to on the phone, to, all my friends, text about it, nobody's happy. I can't see anybody happy with the way this went down. They failed to get it done by 4th of July. That was, what a fail. Big fat fail all the way around. Fail.
And it does appear at this point. So after, I think it was on Friday, Rob Manfred said he was 100% certain there would be a season. And now today he's saying he's not confident there will be a season as long as there's no dialogue with the Players Association. That real risk is going to continue. Well, I don't really, I guess where I'm at a bit of a loss here is that, so there's a few things that are true here. The commissioner said he's 100% sure there'll be baseball. We've heard from the owners that the league can unilaterally just say, here's the parameters of the season. Here's how many games. The players in their response, and this is all a matter of optics on the part of the owners. And I think they might, there might be enough owners that are saying they don't want to pay players and play at all. Like they have to have at least a plurality. I think they got to have like 8. So I don't know what that's, it's not a quorum, not quorum. That's not what it is. It's not a majority, but I think it's got to be at least 8 of them. But something like that, or maybe it's 10. I don't know. Maybe it's a third. But, and I know there are a few that's like, we've heard that before. But what doesn't make any sense to me is the players in their statement, the players are like, hey, look, we've given you some different things. We've said what we want. You've consistently come back with something very different from that. And so here's the deal. Just tell us how many games and when we're going to start, and we'll show up. We're just not going to continue negotiating because we know it's not going to do any good. And the owners took that and be like, well, they're, but no, they're telling you, like, we want to play.
Yeah.
All the players
tell us what's happening. Tell us what's happening.
Let's go, because we know you're not going to meet us in the middle on this thing. So just say it's 55 games, 56 games, 48 games, whatever.
Yeah.
Just give us a date. And the rhetoric now coming from the league is like, well, there might not be a season. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Just say it.
They want the players to come back with something. They want the players to come back with, like, okay, 65 games and expanded playoffs, because they want those expanded playoffs, but the players weren't going to do it without like 72 games.
Right.
And so that's the thing. So the owners want the players to come back with fewer games and the playoffs so they can make their money, so they get their nut. And, and the players like, I'm good. I'll see you next year. See you next year after coronavirus is done. Sorry.
How bad does it look for the owners that in the midst of this, they agree to a new deal with Turner Sports that's going to pay $150 million more per season for the next however many 5 or 6 years?
Never mind the money falling out from behind the wall. Sorry,
this isn't very profitable, but and meanwhile, we're squabbling over what amounts to, I think depending on the difference between a 50 game season at full pay and 72 games is somewhere in the neighborhood of like $19 to $20 million per team. The difference from the owners at their 76 games at 75% and a full 72 games is like $13 million a team. So okay, somewhere in there, if each team, if they're making $150 million more a year, that's $5 million more a team. Over a few seasons, it's all a wash. And the players have offered here's the other thing. The players have offered to defer, and apparently Rob Manfred told Bruce Meyer, who's a lead not negotiator, but whatever, maybe that is. Anyways, like the head lawyer for the MLBPA, he said, well, we don't care about, the owners don't want to defer that money. They don't care about that. They could go borrow it at minuscule interest rates.
Yeah.
Well, if you go borrow hundreds of millions of dollars, then why don't do it and pay them the money?
I said this first. I said they know the Treasury Secretary. They know Munchin. They could go get the money. Like, Munchin, turn on those machines. Out comes $1 billion. Here you go. Start the damn season. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Woo, here we go. And honestly, this could already be done.
It's the most transparent stuff ever.
First of all, I do wonder, because I got a little, we call it on the Sun Ranto show a Cubspiracy. I got a little Cubspiracy here, is that, it's possible, because that would have been, to start on the 4th of July, whether safe or not, would have been a huge W for Trump. Big W for him and his administration. I got this done, and he could brag about that. And now you see, George Bush, Colin Powell, all these like Republican, total like dyed in the wool Republicans from way back, generational Republicans. They're coming out against Trump. And that's a lot more of these billionaires, all of them, that run Major League Baseball. They're more on the side of like hey, slow and steady wins the race. Let's not upset the apple cart too much. They probably don't like Trump either. And I'm wondering if they just never wanted to give Trump that W. And it's just my little conspiracy about it, that like when things happen or don't happen that could have happened, you wonder why they happen. And if people with the wherewithal, i.e. money, to make things happen, don't let that happen, there's always a reason. You follow the money around. You follow any dollar around and you find out why things are going on, every time. My uncle told me this as a kid. It's like, want to know why something is the way it is? Follow the money. Follow the money, you know why something is the way it is. And so you follow this around, you're like, well, why won't they give them a fair deal? Like, they keep repackaging this garbage deal to the players. Well, maybe because they know the players will say no to it over and over again. You're going to delay, not give that Trump that W. He looks more like an asshole day after day, He can't do his rallies, can't get Major League Baseball going. Seems like the country's in the crapper. All this stuff. You get a new guy in there, and you're like, Lord knows, Joe Biden is more like Joe Biden is more like George Bush than anybody else. You know what I mean? Like, so he's more one of those guys. So, old school when, Republicans and Democrats used to just go to the steakhouse across from Capitol Hill and, just get drunk and get hookers together. Together. They did it together. Now they have their own hookers and their own steaks, their own places they go. No, they do. They got their own drug dealers, the whole thing. But, so I know it's a conspiracy, but, you look at, how things are going down and you're like, well, this could have been done. This could have been done a long time ago. All what it cost is money, and they could have, had this triumphant return, made baseball look great. And I just wonder why they didn't do it.
Well, and when you think about it, right, they all the talk about the early July start, but if the owners are really in that mode of, I think at most at this point, the most they would pay full salary is about 56 games. That's where it breaks out to with the money that they've kind of been at. Well, 56 games is 2 months. And if you're going to end in late September, that means actually starting in late July. So, I think part of it's they're perfectly happy continuing to twiddle their thumbs, because if they get the shortest season they want, that means you don't even start spring training until July.
Yeah.
Right. The owners are now, you got to still, there's not plenty of time. You still need to figure that out here, within the next week or two. But I think that's part of it too, is they want this to play out a little bit longer, because you can't start a season because again, the owners don't care about how many games are played. They care about how much money they're paying out in player salaries. That's what we've seen from all these, about 1.5 billion. That's really, it's all kind of, they're moving the pieces around to get there. That 1.5, the other ones, depending on where they go. So if you look at that, it just seems to me that they'll give it these next couple of weeks, and they would like to have, I know they'd prefer to have an agreement because it makes everybody look better, but whatever. But listen, before, because I don't want to drag this out too much longer, and we talked about it a little bit, and I don't want to belabor the point too much. I referred to the movie, the documentary, the 30 for 30 of Long Gone Summer. I called it what was it? Long bummer.
Bummer. Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, I really felt like, so it was appointment television. You know, a ton of people were watching it, right? Because it's something different. And it kind of followed that whole trend of what The Last Dance did. But I said, like, as far as setting an appointment, it felt like walking into my dentist appointment to get my teeth cleaned and ending up getting my tooth drilled for a cavity. You know, like I went in there, I figured, okay, I know what to expect. This is going to be, and then I just kept sitting there and going like I was getting angry and I was mad. But the worst, I mean, I was saddened that it didn't portray any of the energy that I think we all felt. Like, when I talked to Lawrence Holmes, I said, that was a summer for me and a fall of this escapism. You had these two monstrous sluggers just bashing home runs, like just a pair of demigods come down to earth, you know, and Hercules just bashing home runs. And it was so fun. And it was in our face. It was in the news. It was leading this just fun. Again, energetic. And this was like this slog. And you felt like McGuire was just sort of this, you know, this burly oaf a little bit. But the worst I
still feel that way about him, by the way.
They were cutting in. Yeah, he's still kind of that guy. But he's just very and I guess that was part of it too. Is he was this sort of monotone, monolithic, just sort of this stone figure, and Sammy was this vibrant, just out there, you know, super charismatic.
Still, yeah,
no, he very much. And they're both, but it was that contrast between them that also made it so it wasn't like you had these two similar guys, rival teams, very different types of people, both charging toward this.
The travel team, California boy, played for USA Olympics, you know, rookie of the year, golden boy, everybody knew he was going to be good, Bash Brothers, he was already famous. Mm-hmm. Sammy Sosa, skinny kid, poor, Dominican Republic, used to use a milk carton as a baseball glove, you know, playing out there in flip-flops. You know, I watched this cartoon Sammy Sosa documentary thing. It's hilarious. You know, they're playing with a sock, playing sock ball. You know, like two totally different worlds. They could have played that and made it more dramatic, especially, you know, given the fact that, you know, even them today, Sammy Sosa, you know, he's got, there was an infield fly girl on Twitter wrote today. She's like, so disappointed. As we all were, that there was not much Sammy Sosa in this documentary. It was mostly Mark McGuire. And she's like, we didn't even get to see Sammy's hat closet. And I was like, you know, that man has a hat closet because, you know, just style and the artwork behind him on the wall was super cool. And like, they just had that stagnant shot of him. They had nothing about like who he is and what he does and his life in Dubai. And, you know, and nothing about that. Even if you just wanted to talk about 98, that would have been fine, but they didn't even do that. And then I think you were about to say this. They didn't even use footage from Wrigley Field in 98.
They were using B-roll from last year. It was horrible.
With Joe from Obvious Shirts, he's tweeting out, he's like, hey, if you see an obvious shirt in this documentary, which there shouldn't be any if it's about 1998, because Joe was like 12.
St. Louis's boring shirt. Like they showed it. It was on there.
So he's on there, and Joe gave away some free shirts because of that. Because you know, it was ridiculous. The only cool thing that I thought about production wise, I don't know. I thought the music was really cool and it was weird. The music was weird.
It was odd.
It was really odd. And I was like, oh, but it caught my ear. So I was like, oh, this is different than your random like sports doc kind of, you know, fodder for scoring. And I've done a lot of scoring of TV shows and movies and stuff like that. Not a lot, but like a fair amount, you know, I've done like 10, 12 things, you know, where I've scored stuff. And, you know, so I know stuff like that. Now I was like, I definitely noticed how weird that was, but that was good weird. The bad weird was just like the story.
So jarring. Like the Chiron would come across as like September 7th, 1998 over a clear scene of last year, or at least where you see video boards and stuff. And it's like, even if that wasn't like, even if Wrigley had looked somewhat similar now to what it did 20 years ago, well, it goes from this bright, crisp, high definition picture to the fuzzier 98. It's like
98.
You know, you see coming in the bleachers over in the shot was like out of left field. And then, you know, you see a video board over here and over here. And then you see the call of the home run and it goes flying over a 20-foot high chain link fence that's out there. There's nothing. I was like, it's the juxtaposition was just, and it was funny because I tweeted that and I was like, man, I forgot how big Mark McGuire was. I also and really, this is weird. And then Sarah Spain quote tweeted, because she works for ESPN. She was like, this is the exact same thing I thought, because she got to see an early screening of it and thought that it was just like filler footage, that they were working on getting it. But nope, that's what and we're like, you're ESPN. You can't get B-roll from or just cut the same damn thing in there. But then there'd be like a random shot of Guthrie's Tavern on Addison and Lakewood, right? Or the Music Box Theater over on Southport, just right there at Southport and Addison, like like today, just randomly as they're going.
Billy Goat.
Yeah, like why? What does this have to do? It's like it's as if they went in and got just stock video of Chicago that they could find, and I know again some of that's because it was supposed to have been. I think it was originally supposed to have been released in September, and they moved it up because of all this stuff. But it was just like the narrative of it is really what got me, because I'm like it. I think it was initially birthed as a Mark McGwire kind of, we're going to follow his journey on this 98 season, kind of rehabilitation in the eyes of Cardinals fans. And then somebody was like, wait a minute, if we make it like summer of 98, we can get a whole lot more people to watch this. And then they just kind of like slap some shit together on the back end of it. We're like, oh, okay, cool. I'm like, you guys could have, like, that was a national, it didn't have to be a Cardinals Cubs thing. That was a national, that went so much bigger than those two teams. You know what I mean? But the last thing I will say about it is this, and I looked it up just to be sure. So, I get in this when I get feisty and I get in fights with people on Facebook or whatever who are like, well, if you don't have any customers, you can't pay people the same money. I'm like, players aren't paid based on attendance. Well, what do you mean they're not? I said, well, when attendance goes up, do the owners go back to the players? But hey, guys, we made more money because of you, and you were really good, and the more fans came, so we're going to give you more money on your contract right now. As a result, of course, that doesn't happen. So if you look at what happens, like that season, right? You talk about bringing people back from the strike. The Cubs had like 460,000 more fans in 1998 than they did the previous season. The Cardinals had like 530,000 more fans. So that, and then both of them have trended. The Cubs have trended way up ever since then in their attendance and the price that they've charged for people. And while salaries have obviously gone up over time, it's not an immediate thing. It's just that the salaries going up is not that team having more or less fans. It's the industry in general getting bigger, right? So it cracks me up, because that, though, if you're saying, oh, it's the fans, you can't pay as much money. Like, well, absolutely they can, because they're not going to spend this, 460,000 fans. Even if you're saying $20 a pop, that's, there's your million, $10 million or whatever right there. And that's not even considering what all they bought and all the other merchandise. So anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I got something I do want to share about a fun little, if you want to bring it on screen, a fun little interchange I had with Glendon Rush last night on Twitter. Because I was on there and I just asked everybody, and I got 94 answers, which is a lot of answers. But what were you doing in 1998? Just wondering, because to be honest, I was not really watching and clocking any of this. I was partying like a crazy person, touring with the national company of Rant. And then my dad died that November too. So I wasn't like really like clocking all this stuff. But I said, what were you doing in 1998? And Glendon Rush says, giving up number 37. And that was to Mark McGwire. And Glendon Rush was pitching for the Royals at the time. And I said, line of the night. And he's like, it was a long one. So I just happened to see it. Not a lot of stuff is on YouTube from those years, but a Mark McGwire from home run from that year, Mark McGwire home run from that year definitely is. And I looked at it and boy, that was a big, he's like, that was a long run. And I said, don't be too hard on yourself. That upper deck is a short porch if you take the moon into consideration. Because man, did he freaking kill that ball. It was, he got tagged, and, if you go look it up somewhere, everybody, you could take
you could see it in Danny's stream there, but and that was part of it. It wasn't just the number of homers, like there
big were homers,
which is the ironic part of the whole thing. And I know this has always been, is that number 62 barely snuck out over the wall. Like it was a laser beam shot that just went out on a line and cleared that fence out there in left field at Busch Stadium by like a foot. But those guys were hitting moonshots. And I just remember like every day, like you had to watch. Everybody was glued to it. Didn't matter if you were a fan of those teams.
Yeah.
And I was in college, like I said at the time. And so I would have been back, what was that, late July, early August. So, as the season was kind of winding down, but then, and then the Cubs ended up being this surprise team that they win the play-in game, or the wild card game, and that Gary Gaetti home run, and that was crazy. And then, they got stomped by the Braves, but that was still like the Cubs kind of came out of nowhere, and that was a really, really fun season. And like I said, it was a little bit of a downer. But I would like to see somebody kind of go back through. I'd almost like to see them take that and be like, you know what? Like they talk about the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, like let somebody go back and hack that thing up a little bit and like make it. Cause if you set that up, and I promise I'll shut up here in a little bit, but if you set up at the beginning, the idea of the strike and kind of where baseball was at, what was going on with attendance, all those things. And
they missed kind of all that stuff.
Yeah. And you kind of put in the Cal Ripken, right? Cause that was like 95. I think that happened. It was still kind of, and then you sort of lead into how that happened, and you build up who these characters are, and let us know, because if you don't already know who Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa are, or only one, like, why am I invested in this? Why do I care? Like, I want to know more about. And they covered it a little, but get into that. Like I even said, hey, rookie year, who did Mark McGwire tie for the major league lead? Andre Dawson from the Cubs, a right fielder who won the MVP that year on a crappy last place team, but still, like, it sort of sets up this whole, this karma, like this is a journey that Mark McGwire was meant to make and to defeat this Cub at,
it felt like
all kinds of stuff.
It felt like a big commercial to get Mark McGwire into the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
That they stuck Sammy Sosa in, just for good measure, and tried to make, because they didn't play up any of that. It was pretty bad storytelling, and it didn't create any kind of drama or excitement. And for the most part, I just enjoyed getting drunk and tweeting the whole time and making fun of it. Like I had a good time. Like I had a few pops like sitting there and just like being snarky and having Twitter exchanges with Cubs players of the time, and just having a good time. But I don't watch TV barely ever. I watch Cubs games, and that's about it. And even then, I'm usually on the radio or there. And, so it was kind of nice to like have something to, sit down and watch with everybody, the appointment television. But yeah, for a TV, from a TV production standpoint, I thought it was a big fat fail.
Yeah. I mean, the part that I really enjoyed when they did show Sosa's June, and talk about the 20 home runs he hit there, because he was, up until that point, it was McGwire and Griffey, and kind of they were going back, and then Sosa's all, it's like that June, like that was wild. And I think it was oh gosh, who was it? Oh gosh darn it, who told me they went to a series in Kansas City and saw him play 3 games and he never hit any home runs? And I was like, man, that's like pretty impressive. If you went to see Sammy Sosa play 3 straight games, you didn't hit any home runs,
and especially in June.
Now I'm mad at when I saw that yesterday. But anyway, no, it was a cool, that part was cool. So we'll see. But you know what? I don't mind that we ran a little bit long, because we're not going to have a show tomorrow. So we're going to chill out. But Wednesday is, we're bringing Matt Kammerer on Wednesday. Is that right?
Yeah. He's going to share a lot of his artwork. He's got a new series of the map art that he's been doing. He got Javier Baez over the I guess territory of Puerto Rico. And he's drawn a lot of different Chicago legends, your Michael Jordans and stuff, over the city of Chicago. And he's done a lot of the Cubs players that way. He's actually doing, he's done a few, I guess, custom jobs for people. And for my birthday, my girlfriend, Nicole, she, I guess, requisitioned, or that's not the wrong word. What commissioned. Yeah. She commissioned me a drawing of me, which, as an egotistical man, like, this is not the first, time I've been drawn and painted, because I'm so handsome. And so people, they,
is it a nude? Is it a nude? Because I'd buy that print if it's, as long as,
oh hell yeah, just me on a bearskin rug over the city of Chicago.
I want you to do the Clark pose with the jersey and pantsless
dog, just the dong. I don't know if it's, I don't know if I got what Clark's they're hanging there, but no, my brother-in-law painted, my ex-brother-in-law painted me one time. He did a whole series of his friends, and he did me, and Matt's doing one of me. So I don't know if he's started that yet. So anyway, he's one of my favorite Cubs artists. I've got a bunch of his art, if you can kind of see behind me on the wall. He did that John Baker. He did all of it. Dick Bump. He did You Go, We Go. I'll show off some of this stuff, but he's going to come kind of talk about his Cubs fandom, show off some of his artwork, some of his new stuff. You know, if you don't know him, he's a cool guy and really fun to talk to. And Evan, you were going to get a tattoo from him, and so maybe you guys talk a little tattoo.
Yeah, absolutely. That's still on the docket. I've got 2 of his. I've got a Ron Santo print of his, and one that he did of Kyle Schwarber. So I got a couple of his works hanging prominently up here in the basement. And yeah, I was supposed to get a tattoo from him on June 1st when I was out there in St. Louis way, but I didn't have to go that way, so I got one here locally from someone else a couple days later. But I will later this year probably go out and see him for that, because he does super good work. And he was at a Cubs convention, so we got to talk a little bit, and it was interesting. So his funny story, and then we'll be done, I guess. But his daughter's boyfriend, I don't know if they're still dating, but at least at the time, is like a dead ringer for Adbert Alzolay, and like had the same kind of a similar red suit that he wore to their prom. And so like I'm interviewing Alzolay, and they come up, and she's like, "Oh my God!" It's like, "Here's a picture of my boyfriend. Look at this. He looks just like you." And he did. It was like the weirdest thing, because it was like, they look super similar. So it's just kind of a funny. It was a fun deal. But yeah, super good dude. And as we've talked about on here before, like we talked with Katie Day, I am super interested in the artistic process, and I love, because he'll share those pictures. If you look at his Twitter, and like the one he did of Jordan and the Bulls. And he was like, okay, he's blocking the blacks and reds. And then he was like showing the progression of it. I'm sitting there looking at it like, dude, I don't even know how you can envision that, let alone make it come to life. So I just want to kind of pick his brain on that stuff, and, you know, kind of unplug from the stupidness of the baseball non-season for a while. So.
Well, that's it. And you know, all the wonderful artists that surround Cubs fandom, it's been we've met a lot of cool people with a lot of different great talents from all kinds of artistic fields. And it's great. And Matt has, donated to every single John Baker Day. He's donated his art. He's never asked for a dime. And I know it's cost him money. So he's putting in his own money. You know, like a bunch of us that throw John Baker Day, we put in our own money and time to make it happen. And Matt's been one of those people that have been very instrumental getting stuff signed. That Wilson behind me is signed by Wilson Contreras. It says, says Venezuela Libre, which means, free Venezuela, free Venezuela, which, I don't know how they're doing. I haven't really looked into that lately. Right. Everybody's kind of fending for themselves at this point. But yeah, no, he's an awesome artist, and I'm excited to talk to him. So we'll do that on Wednesday, and then we'll see everybody then, I guess.
Awesome. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll say goodbye to everybody. So hopefully everybody enjoyed that. And again, there's some positive news throughout the baseball world going on at the lower levels. So let's keep focusing on that, and hopefully we'll have something good to keep talking about.
Yeah, we got a Sun Ranto show tonight, and I've already got texts from both Michael and Crawley saying I do not want to talk about the owners and players. So I'm like,
go. Good luck.
We're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're just not doing it. We're gonna do it, but we're not doing it.
Nice. And we'll see everybody on Wednesday.
All right, cool.